But I have to get my side into this too. They got me interested in trying it out, and the first time out, it worked. I called, it doesn't work anymore, and there's no address I can write to, so I have no way of contacting my.
You are not going to believe what Thomas Markle just threw into the royal fire pit, because honestly, this one has everyone clutching their pearls. The man didn't just speak, he dropped something so explosive that royal watchers are practically losing their minds. And the wildest part? He's hinting that the official story about his own daughter, yes, Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex herself, doesn't match what he remembers from the very beginning. And girl, what he remembers does not match the timeline the world has been fed. And then, hold your breath, there's this dusty old teen magazine from 1997.
A scandal nobody saw coming. What if the headlines you've been scrolling through missed the juiciest, most
a harmless, forgotten issue sitting in archives for decades, but inside it, on some random page, a tiny detail, a number, printed right next to Meghan's name. And when you do the math, that number is off by 6 years, not 1, not 2, 6. That's not a typo. That's not bad editing. That's a whole different life timeline. And if that number is true, then everything changes. Her Hollywood career timeline shifts. When she met Harry, different. Even the royal pregnancies, suddenly the math isn't mathing. Because when you change the age, the entire story shakes. So buckle up.
Or is there more to the story than we've been told? Stay with us as we uncover the explosive truth behind Tom.
Because what Thomas is saying, and what this magazine suggests, does not fit the fairy tale version the public was sold. Before we jump in, hit that like button and subscribe. Because what's coming next is going to leave you staring at the screen like, wait, what? These details have literally been sitting in plain sight, waiting for someone bold enough to connect the dots. And baby, today is that day. So let's start with Thomas Markle for a second. Normally when a dad talks about his daughter, you hear warmth.
Across to Rosarito, Mexico, where we're joined by our friend, Thomas Markle, the father.
Pride, softness, that gentle glow in their voice. They laugh, they brag, they drift into sweet nostalgia. But when Thomas talks about Meghan, oh, it hits different. There's weight in his tone, caution, almost like a man who has been holding the truth in his chest for years and is finally letting it spill before it's too late and the world locks itself into a story he knows isn't accurate. He remembers everything, the childhood moments, the school plays, the ambition, the fire in her personality. She wasn't the child who waited for life to hand her things. She chased what she wanted every single time he watched that drive form from day one. He was there at every moment that shaped her timeline. The graduations, the early acting dreams, the steps toward Hollywood.
Meghan Markle this Sunday, featuring an extraordinary message from...
These aren't fuzzy memories for him. These are the dates parents don't forget even if they wanted to. But here's where the whole thing takes a sharp left turn. When Meghan became a global figure practically overnight, Thomas started noticing that the stories she shared publicly didn't quite fit. The dates, the milestones, the when this happened parts.
She just woke up one day in a new world and decided that she doesn't have any family.
I believe she had
weren't the same as the version he lived, and we're not talking tiny things like a forgotten school event. No, we're talking the major milestones. Graduation dates, her first acting gigs, the age she claimed during those early Hollywood roles. These aren't little facts you can shrug off. These are things a parent remembers perfectly. And according to Thomas, the timeline being presented to the world didn't match the timeline he witnessed. It was like watching someone retell your family history, but with off-key details that don't fit. Like a puzzle piece forced into the wrong spot, looking fine from a distance but totally wrong up close. And here's the kicker. Thomas isn't some distant cousin with selective memories. He's not a random royal commentator. He's the man who held her as a baby. A man who literally saw these milestones. He doesn't need to Google her early life. He lived it frame by frame. So when Thomas softly starts saying things like the timeline doesn't fit, or hinting that maybe Meghan wasn't as young as the world was told, or suggesting her official birth year might have been adjusted somewhere along the journey.
The father that won't back down. Once a devoted father who proudly supported his daughter.
It lands differently. These aren't internet theories. These are observations from the man who was present the day she arrived into the world, and he speaks so carefully. Every word placed like he knows exactly the weight it carries. Less like gossip, more like someone who's tired of watching a story unfold with pieces missing. pieces he knows exist. When Thomas said the Meghan he raised didn't match the Meghan timeline presented to the public, that was the first crack in the flawless, polished story, because rumors can be brushed off, speculation can be ignored, but a father saying, "That's not how I remember it," that cannot be dismissed as easily. Okay, now let's talk about that magazine, because this is where jaws hit the floor. We're diving back to March 1997. 17 magazine, the iconic Bible for every teenage girl back in the day. The magazine that told you what lip gloss to buy, what jeans were in, and which boy band member you were destined to date. Buried inside that issue, page 90, was a simple list. Just names of young dreamers hoping to make it big someday. And there she was, Meghan Markle, age 21. At first glance, you'd scroll past it without blinking.
Visit across to Rosarito, Mexico, where we're joined by our friend, Thomas Markle, the father.
But then someone did the math, and suddenly the whole internet froze. Because if Meghan was born on August 4th, 1981, like the official timeline claims, then she would have been 15 in March 1997, not 21. Not 21. Those words practically echo now. That's a 6-year difference. Not a typo. Not a misprint, a full life-changing 6 years. And this wasn't a sketchy blog. This wasn't user-edited Wikipedia in the early 2000s. This was a professional, printed, fact-checked magazine sold nationwide. Something that went through editors, designers, proofreaders, real humans with professional standards. And the page still exists. You can go find that exact issue right now. Untouched, unchanged, with the number 21 staring back at you like it's been waiting for someone to notice if that number was correct. Then everything changes. Suddenly, Meghan wasn't a 20-something starlet chasing Hollywood dreams. She was pushing 30. She wasn't the young ingenue. She was already a grown woman navigating an industry obsessed with youth. And the narrative shifts dramatically. Because magazines don't randomly invent someone's age, especially not in curated lists like that. Those ages usually come from the person or their representative, meaning either 17 magazine somehow invented a fake age for her, or the age printed back then was the one being provided at the time. And if that's the case, then where did the 1981 birth year come from later? This is where things get chilling. The magazine predates her fame before Hollywood, before royal attention, before the world had any reason to question her age at all. It was printed long before anyone had a motive to adjust anything. So now we're staring at two separate timelines. The official 1981 story and the 1975/1976 story based on that magazine entry. 6 years apart, both printed, both still existing, but only one can be true. And the contradiction between them is explosive. Because if she was 21 in 1997, her entire narrative shifts. When she graduated, when she started acting, how old she really was entering Hollywood. Then her royal timeline changes too. Meeting Harry, marrying into the monarchy, having children. All those ages move by 6 years. Imagine the royal fairy tale told to the world, but with the ages swapped. Now she'd be pushing 50 in 2025, not 44, two timelines, two different life stories, and neither can coexist. If that magazine timeline is true, everything the world believes about Meghan's age, her rise, her Hollywood struggles, and even the royal whirlwind changes instantly, and suddenly the polished public story starts to look less like a biography and more like a carefully edited highlight reel. Because here's the thing, when Meghan met Prince Harry, the world was told she was 36, a successful actress in her mid-30s stepping gracefully into royal life. It was modern. It was empowering. It fit the fairy tale the public wanted to believe, a mature, successful woman finding love and stepping into a centuries-old institution as if rewriting the script of what royalty could look like, because when Harry described Archie's birth, it sounded like something out of a peaceful Netflix documentary. Calm, serene, dreamy. But then, people who actually work in hospitals began raising their eyebrows so high they practically left their faces. According to Harry, Meghan gave birth at Portland Hospital, a place known for handling high-profile deliveries with top-tier medical supervision. He described this beautiful, calming setup. Dim lights, peaceful mood, 2 epidurals to manage the pain, and then said they were back home at Frogmore Cottage within 2 hours of the birth too. Hours. Then comes the timeline. Portland Hospital to Frogmore Cottage is roughly an hour's drive, sometimes more. So if the total time from birth to being fully settled at home was 2 hours, that leaves 1 hour for everything else: delivery, monitoring, recovery after epidural, paperwork, discharge procedures, packing up, getting dressed, getting to the car. 1 hour, and with an epidural? No, just no. After an epidural, your legs are numb. Sensation doesn't come back instantly. Hospitals don't let you just hop up and stroll out. You need time, sometimes a lot of it, for the medication to wear off and your vitals to stabilize. And that's in a perfectly smooth, uncomplicated birth. But Meghan's pregnancy, according to Harry's own hints and multiple reports, wasn't low risk. It was classified as geriatric, the medical term for pregnancies in women 35 or older, completely standard medically, but it triggers closer monitoring, stricter protocols, and more caution. And then came the whispers about high blood pressure. Some sources even mentioned early signs of preeclampsia, one of the most serious pregnancy complications a mother can face. In cases like that, hospitals don't discharge mothers in 2 hours. They sometimes won't discharge them for 2 days. The monitoring is constant. The medical oversight is intense. Safety protocols aren't optional, they're mandatory. But Harry describes a spa-like atmosphere, birthing balls, candles, a wellness-style setup. And medical professionals read that and went, absolutely not. High-risk pregnancies, especially with blood pressure issues, don't happen in candlelit tranquility. They happen in medically supervised environments with equipment everywhere, nurses monitoring vitals, and specialists on standby. Then came the magnesium sulfate protocol, something anyone dealing with preeclampsia would be put on a treatment that makes you feel hot, weak, and extremely out of it. Something that requires at least 24 hours of monitoring after birth. Something that absolutely prevents a 2-hour discharge, which brings us to the biggest medical contradiction of all. If Meghan was being treated for high blood pressure or preeclampsia, even mild versions, the timeline described becomes medically impossible. It simply cannot happen. No hospital would allow it. No doctor would sign off on it. No recovery would be that fast. And when you combine this with the age discrepancy, suddenly everything begins to feel like a carefully polished surface with cracks appearing underneath. But here's the twist. It's not just Thomas Markle noticing inconsistencies. It's not just online chatter. It's not just curious researchers flipping through old magazines, a reported insider at Portland Hospital, someone who knows exactly how things work there, has allegedly said that the story in Harry's book doesn't line up with the hospital's protocols, not even close. So now, on one side, you have Thomas Markle saying the timeline doesn't match his memory. On the other, you have a hospital insider saying the birth story doesn't match medical reality. Two different people, two different angles of the story, same conclusion, something isn't lining up. And it's not about tearing anyone down, it's not about pointing fingers. It's about the fact that the inconsistencies are too big to ignore. A 6-year discrepancy in a printed magazine, a birth timeline that contradicts basic medical procedures, a father who lived the timeline saying it doesn't match, a hospital source saying the details don't fit. These aren't minor slip-ups, they're not typos, they're not miscommunications. These are foundational pieces of someone's public story, and they don't match the documented facts. Now here's where it gets even more interesting, because when you're connected to the royal family, one of the most watched, photographed, analyzed institutions in the world, everything becomes part of the image. Every detail is curated, every story is refined, everything must be cohesive. And sometimes when a story is crafted to perfection, the messy, complicated parts get softened or adjusted along the way. Maybe ages get presented differently, maybe medical stories get smoothed into magical moments, maybe timelines get tightened or polished to fit the narrative better. Does that mean anything was done intentionally? Nobody is saying that. But when you look at the pieces laid out on the table, the magazine, the medical contradictions, the father's memories, the insider's account, you can't help but notice the gaps. And once you see the gaps, you can't unsee them.